So, hi, Matthias. What was your first line of code?
Hi, Adam. Okay, so this is a long time ago. I think it was a Hello World in Power Basic in the early 90s.
Power Basic.
Yeah, it was Power Basic. It was shipped with my first PC. It was from a high screen PC, and there was Power Basic out of the box available. Yes.
Very interesting, because I know QBasic, but never heard about Power Basic.
Yeah,
So,
I know QBasic. I think it was part of Microsoft DOS, and on this PC it was a special edition. It was DL-DOS. I don't know if you know from digital research. It was very similar,
okay.
and was from Wobis, was a PC seller, a computer store, and they shipped DL-DOS with some tools, and Power Basic was part of it. And afterwards, I realized that it was very powerful. So it's comparable with Turbo Pascal,
Really?
but with the basic syntax. You have procedures and all this stuff. So this was my first line of code with Power Basic, yes.
Okay. And was it your machine? So,
unfortunately not. I think I was 13 or 14 years old, and was a PC of my parents. And at this time, I just was curious about everything, and I tried each program even without knowing what happens. And yes, and so I detected also Power Basic on this PC, and then I tried to play a little bit with the stuff, and then then afterwards I realized, okay, this is programming code.
okay. So you didn't play it a lot. So you didn't like games. So you just started with the serious stuff, right?
No, not really. At this time, of course, the most time was gaming, of course. All the days with floppy disk after school, we changed a lot of games, and of course. But I was always interested in how does it work. Let me say, because I was not I play the games, but I was not very good in playing the games.
Okay. So what's interesting me, because if you're playing a game, you forget the time. So if actually you have no time for anything else. So and you still have time then, to find out things and start, various programs from a computer. So you were not very good at games, and you wanted then to see how the games are made, or what was the story behind?
Exactly. And the first step was, of course, how can I cheat this stuff? Maybe to change the high score list to something else. How is it working behind the scenes? Because we changed the games, of course. And so it was just interesting to see how does it work. And nevertheless, I spent a lot of time with gaming in this age.
Yeah, what I remember, actually, because you're saying this right now, I couldn't understand, where is the source code? So my computer was a little bit earlier, but was also basic, and I wrote lots of basic stuff. But the games came, ready to use. So I had it's like, why? Why there's no source code? So I would expect that you would run, or load the game as a source code, and it will run. But the game come, of course, they were written in assembly or C or whatever. And this is what made me really curious to know why the games are different to my stuff, what I'm actually building.
It is because on my PC it was the case, but of course some of my friends also before was not on my own PC, was the Commodore C64. Some of the games was just written in BASIC. Now you have to load and run the game, so you have a look. You was able to see something of the games, and so this was my first starting point where I realized, okay, there's something like a program code which is executable. But of course, the games we played on my PC was the most time just I also saw the executables.
So you started earlier than the PC, right?
Yeah, of course, but was not my own PC. It was after the school meeting with some friends, and then they had already a C64.
Okay, so your very first, encounter to a computer, was it the C64?
Yeah, but I think it was my first one was, I think, 1991 or 1992 was my first PC.
Okay.
And before, I think a few years before, some of my friends had already some PCs where we met after school. And
okay, but what was the computer you saw the first time? So you remember that? So the first time I saw a computer, what machine was it and where?
Yeah, it was a C64.
C64, okay. So it's already a nice machine. Okay, so you did a little bit with Power Basic. What happens then?
After that, I tried to besides this, just to learn a little bit more about programming. There was a magazine which was monthly. Each month you get this magazine from this computer store, and they explained how to use the programs they shipped. So, and one of the series was also an explanation about BASIC. And so I followed the stuff and I was very happy because of now I was able to produce something more than a Hello World just to follow these guides. And I tried to develop my own game, which was quite complicated to develop a jump and run game, but it works a little bit. And so, yes, so I tried to develop a jump and run game with Power Basic. We have different screens. You run about the screens and then, yeah, exactly. And then if you run against the border, you was dead and so on. This was something what I tried to develop. But after that, I realized it's very complicated to share with my friends.
Okay.
Because it's just a basic file. And so I tried everything. How can I share it? Because I was very proud of the stuff, even if it was not very good. But I would like to share the game. And so I make different experiences. So I try to, okay, how can I do this? So I try to change the color of Power Basic and ship Power Basic with my basic files.
Okay.
And said it's not so complicated. I changed everything to black and wrote a batch file and say, okay, please press enter and press F5 to execute the environment as a program and such stuff. But after that, I realized, okay, I need a system where I can compile executables.
Mm-hmm.
And since I think it was Christmas when I bought my first developer system with where I can compile to executables. Then I was able to share my developed stuff, but the feedback was, of course, quite bad. Everybody said, okay, this is a very bad game comparing to Commander Keen or something else, which was out there at this time.
Okay.
But for me, it was fun.
So at Christmas, you got a new machine or just got your first IDE?
As a first IDE, a full version where I can run executables.
And what was it?
It was Power Basic.
Still,
as a full version. It's still Power Basic because I was familiar with the stuff. And I take all my money, and then I think it was 200 D-Mark at this time. Mm-hmm. And then I was able to have a full version.
Oh, that's interesting. So the Power Basic, what you got was like demo version or shareware. They were not able to produce the executable, and then you bought the IDE, and then you can ship the binary file.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. And then what was
after that I switched to Turbo Pascal.
Okay.
After I had the full version a few months later, I switched and said, okay, Turbo Pascal is still cool, and so we got a license from school at this time, so it was fine. But before I didn't know about Turbo Pascal.
So what's interesting? So your first program you wrote was actually the game, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, where I was, which was, let me say, a real story behind. Before I had some experience just to build menu bars, and I was fascinated from this stuff to have a menu bar and to click and drop down list, but there was no added value. It was just to see something on the screen. Let me say.
Okay, so you are expert in menu bars.
At this time, yes.
That's very cool. Okay, and then Turbo Pascal, you learned about the programming language at school.
Yes.
Was it, which school was it?
It was in Germany. It's a Realschule was it this time.
Okay.
And at this time it was very progressive. Let me say, was already in school. We had in the 8th class, we already learned a little bit about GV Basic from the C64, and from the 9 and 10 class we worked with Turbo Pascal.
I think that the Realschule is the high school, something similar to the international business.
Maybe. I'm not completely sure if you can compare. Yes, maybe yes.
Yes, something like this, right? This is the second major school, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you liked Turbo Pascal, or you still preferred Power Basic?
I liked it, but from the ideas, I think it was almost the same, because of also Power Basic supports procedures, call by reference, call by value. So, but the cool thing was, I understand it's cool what I have done before. So at the beginning, I just did it and it worked, but I have no really, I don't understand every idea behind the concepts. But in the school, we learned a little bit more. So for me, it was okay. And then I switched to Turbo Pascal because of, if you work in school with this stuff. So just, for me, it was almost the same. And yeah, it was quite cool.
Yeah, but you already understood call by reference and back then?
Yes, I used it, but I don't understand the full ideas behind it. I used, if I take it in this way, if I write it in or out, so then the behavior is this one, but I don't know the term at this time. learned this is cool.
In the Realschule already. So this is actually,
yeah.
it was amazing. So that you learned, so early such stuff.
Yeah, it was quite cool at this time because of later when I discussed with other people and they say, okay, they never used this. They made other things which we don't do at school, but this school was quite cool. There were some teachers who were very progressive and teach a lot of this stuff. So it was a good time.
My teacher had a programming language. It was strange, but he wrote a chess program. And the programming language was COMAL or something like this. No, not COBOL, rather COMAL or something like this. So, but it was easy to read, and he was really into it. So, this was my experience. Also, very progressive teacher. So, what you did after Turbo Pascal?
I started with C.
Oh, and in Turbo Pascal, you wrote something else which was significant, like the game in Powerbase.
No, was something for school. We did some tools just to address management, but to be clear, in this age, I know all the phone number of my friends. I had it in my head, so I don't need a computer for doing this.
Yeah.
But I wrote this program for address management, but normally nobody have a need for this.
Okay. And so the C. Why you started with C?
Because of after this Realschule, I changed to the Fachoberschule. It's the next level, just to be able to study afterwards. And this was the option to have an additional course about C. And of course, I was curious about this. And then I started with C, and I liked it. Was cool.
Yeah, this is actually interesting because you learned C before actually you studied, right? So this is yeah.
Exactly so. And this was for me, it was very cool because of then you learned much more concepts about programming language with C. And so this was very good. Okay.
And you just learned that there's, suppose, nothing significant, so there was no additional game, so you just learned C, right?
No, at this time, then I was already also 16 and so I developed some stuff, but then you have less time because you have to go out and so on.
Okay.
A little bit more difficult.
Okay, so this was my next question, whether you spent all the time just hacking in basement or you had a first or second life,
let me say with 16, the C or the computer was my second life. The first life was going out.
I won't ask you anymore what you did outside, but I can imagine with 16. So then you had C, and then you started study, I guess, right?
Yes.
Computer science?
Yes, at the University of Applied Science was computer science. Yes.
Yeah, where was it?
In Würzburg.
Würzburg, okay. So around, I would say, 300 kilometers north of Munich, or 250, or how?
250 is 300, so it's more close to Frankfurt.
Yeah, so. Exactly. What happened in study? So you learned, you stick with C, or you learned another language?
At this time we started with Turbo Pascal,
okay.
Then C++, then C++. And C++ was interesting because this was the first time when I worked with an object-oriented language. And I don't like it in the beginning.
You didn't like it?
I don't like it. Coming from C, I don't like the C++. Was many things with wizards and was many magic behind. So maybe I started wrong because after we got the idea and the concepts, I started with ActiveX controls. Mm-hmm. And this was writing ActiveX controls was not really intuitive for me. So you have everything to do with some wizards because otherwise it's become too complicated. And so I was very happy about my experience with C++.
So I assumed it was Visual C++, right, from Microsoft?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So then probably you were better because you know the and which C compiler you used at the Fachhochschule of the FOS? Linux?
No. I think it was already on Windows PCs with Microsoft Visual Studio.
But, okay.
Was not on Linux. So.
Okay, then it was probably Microsoft as well. So because I wonder whether you were better than the profs, if you know already C and they wanted you to use wizards, so probably there were different expectations.
After I realized what we did at the university at this time, I don't visit it too often. I was not so often in the university. So
Okay.
I cannot share if the profs are better. I think they have experience, but from my experience, they just teach some basics, and the mission of the students is to go in detail. So, but I
Yeah.
don't was too often there.
Okay. But you finished the study?
Yes, otherwise I would have get trouble with my mom.
Okay. So at the study,
Not easy.
nothing significant happened. So you survived the study and spent a lot of
Mm.
time outside because you were older
No,
than
no, no,
16.
no,
No.
no. I was I insist was a little bit more older.
Okay.
Um, because of also at the university we did different more programming language like Fortran and so
Okay.
on. And I think okay, I don't get what. So if you know C, Turbo Pascal, and then you do Fortran, I said okay, who is using this stuff? I was a little bit strange.
Yeah.
But of course, you realize the problem is very good with the floating arithmetic and so on. But in this, after 1 year, university was as a first internship,
Okay.
and this was quite cool because of I was the first time in touch with Java. So during this, Java was quite new, and this company said, okay, maybe it's cool if some of the students get some experience with Java, so we can just follow this, just to get also an idea about Java. So and in this company, I worked as a working student afterwards. So the most time I was at work,
Ec-
after, not
Yeah.
at the university, so because if I just I follow the money, let me say.
Okay. And which company was it?
It was in Würzburg. It was Nobiscom. It was a small consulting company for the insurance industry.
Nabiscum. I heard about them. As
Yes, I know because of I worked for a long time at this company, and I think in the chat before we talked about, I think 7 or 8 years ago, I asked you to do a training at this company was in Würzburg,
Okay.
Rotterdorf.
Okay, then it was Nobiscum. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's interesting. So I thought this was a different company, but Nobiscum. Okay, cool. So you spend a lot of time at the company, and you learn Java. And which software you wrote for the company there? You know it?
In the beginning, during the internship, was just because it was a test, it was a front end for CVS because it was always command line.
Mhm.
Was a long time before Subversion, and so just to have a test how is it working, the threading model and so on. This was the idea from my boss, just to see how it's working, if it makes sense for this company to also to switch from the technology stack because it was all C and C++ guys, also to get more familiar with Java at this time. And so this was a test. So I wrote this tool for the UI, and it was a small tool in the end, and we collect a lot of experience.
Okay, so they were happy with the outcome.
Yes, I think we also used it for a short time, but then not too long because of then for some reasons with the major customer there was some commercial subversion CVS tools out there where we forced to use. So we don't use it too long, but it was used in production, so it was quite cool.
So in Java, you spent most of your time on the client side, so Swing.
And in the beginning, Swing was not part of Java, so it was AWT in the
Oh,
first
so you were really early. So
and
you started with
AWT.
so you started with JDK 1.1.
Yes, 1.1. I think at and Swing was added at 1.1.3 or something else.
1.2, I think.
Or 1.2. I don't remember because.
So at the beginning,
think
what at the beginning happened? Swing was optional, so you had to download Swing as a bundle, and there were the packages com.sun.swing, and they included to Java and renamed the packages, which caused some drama back then. So they renamed com.sun.swing to javax.swing. And
this is what I did in the end of my internship because I first started with the AWT, and it looks ugly. It was working, but looks very ugly. And then I explored for me, okay, so there's additional library Swing, and then I changed the UI to Swing.
Okay.
But as an external dependency.
Yeah, this is also what I did. So we were exactly at the same time in projects.
Yeah. Okay, but this was it was an internship, so it was not a project where you have the customer pressure, let me say.
Yeah, in my case it was the same. So we evaluated the Swing for a larger project, and so what I just remember, if the Swing was external library, it was not very stable. There were lots of bugs, also rendering bugs.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. what's then? So I mean, you stick with Nobiscum and you create the CVS client. What was your next project?
Okay, so then after that, I started earning money for this company as a consultant or during my study already, and I switched a bit to a strange stuff. I worked for 3 or 4 years after the time as a Lotus Notes consultant. Was very popular in big companies as collaboration tool. So and they had this Lotus script language, which is quite similar to Visual Basic, and this was the first step. But then I think after 1.5 years was quite cool because of then they changed a little bit. With Lotus Notes 5, the backend was able to write also Java again, which I was quite happy. So I was able to code and a little bit more reasonable stuff. And so we did very crazy things at this time. For example, because of the UI was so ugly, we decided to develop some ActiveX controls and implement the Internet Explorer and write everything with HTML for the UI, for Microsoft specific HTML. Because of this, if you develop, I think it was Internet Explorer 5 or something else, if you develop specific HTML code, it was possible to write very nice UIs already at this time. So, and this was embedded in Lotus Notes in the end. Because of this was from a strategical point of view from our customer, it was fixed to use it, and then we did a lot of dirty hacks.
But Lotus Notes looked actually good. So do I remember?
It was a long time before.
Okay. No, it wasn't that long. So my encounter with Lotus was 1997 when JDK 118 was out. And the reason I know that, because we tried to access Lotus Notes from Java, and there were JDBC-like drivers, so we were able to do it. And the user interface, this was like, the tiles where you can push the tile. There was the database behind. And it was like, yellowish, the color. And it looked actually, for me, really pleasant. So it's not like it was, it was interesting.
Yeah, you are right. Because of this, also the views was quite cool. But if you go to the forms, there was some problems like the requirements was just to have a drop-down list of some of the entries as strike through.
Okay.
And so on. Or we had forms with more than 1,000 attributes on tabs.
Okay.
And Lotus Notes was not able to manage 1,000 attributes on one form. From the database was okay, but we have 64 kilobyte problems. With the normal stuff, we had to save it in rich text fields and so on to have more memory. And so, because for some specific reason, for the business requirements, where we was not able to manage this with Lotus Notes from the UI. Because of the views and so on, we keep this because it was quite cool, the stuff with the replication and so on. And yes.
So Lotus Notes became actually really popular because there was another database called CouchDB.
Yeah.
And the CouchDB was the main Lotus Notes developer. I think took the idea and open sourced the ideas as CouchDB.
Okay, I didn't know this, but because for me, when we talk about the last 5 years, NoSQL database was more and more popular, and I was remembered back to the time of my Lotus Notes consulting time, because was already similar like a NoSQL data store.
Yeah, exactly.
Document the Lotus Notes stuff, the documents. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you were then a Notes consultant, and then back to Java with Notes 5. What you did then?
After that, was something because of some of the strategic point of view, some of the people was not convinced about Lotus Notes to write really business applications for the insurance industry. So, but from the front end, it was fixed. So we said, okay, in the midterm, I think they will change the front end to another technology. We switched to server-side programming language inside with stored procedures into the database for some modules. So in the beginning was Transact SQL from Microsoft. And after that was a strategic decision. This was a big insurance company in Munich. And then they decided, okay, we have to switch to Oracle. And then I spent more or less 1 year with PL SQL, which was also quite interesting to have this experience with PL SQL on the server side. And exactly. And after this time, I think I completely switched to Java. Okay.
So you were back in Java, I assume, JDK 1.3, 1.4 time base?
Yes, 1.3. I think with 1.3, we started real projects without Lotus Notes just to have Java systems.
Okay, so and then you spend a lot of your time, I think, on the server then, right? Was server-side programming.
Yes, but also, of course, depending on the client, you also have to develop some UIs. But I was more interested at this time in the backend, yes.
Yeah. Which server you used back then?
At this time was typically Tomcat.
Okay.
Yes.
Tomcat.
But I don't remember the right version. I don't know.
Okay. And so you built the software with Tomcat and Spring, Hibernate?
No, because it was a little bit also before Spring sometimes. Sometimes we use just JSP and servlets.
Okay.
And did some,
Then probably struts, right? Then
struts, of course. Struts was, I spent a lot of time with struts in projects, but we have also some of the projects where we use just JSP tag libraries, build some tags, and did a lot of infrastructure at ourselves. Most of the time makes, of course, a lot of fun, but was not really good from an outcome from business value. But from a developer point of view, of course, was quite cool to develop also this infrastructure stuff.
Okay. So you spent probably a lot of time, fighting, not having too much logic in the JSPs and keeping everything in the actions, right?
Exactly, yes.
Cool. So, and then, I mean, we are probably around 2004 right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I had one year with Perl.
Oh,
other language.
How you like it? So how was the switch from Java to Perl? So you like Perl, or what was the experience?
It depends. I think I like Perl if you use it for some scripting on the Linux machine. That's great. For some text file parsing. What we did with Perl was completely stupid. In the end, I also shared my opinion about this. This answer kicked me out of the project after 1 year.
So then you learned something about politics, right? How they work.
Exactly. It was interesting because I was as a consultant as an employee of a company, and I said, okay, we have to think about maintenance, and this makes absolutely no sense. But some of the people was fixed in the beginning and they shared, yes, we start maybe after we launch, we can rethink about refactoring and say, okay, then we go ahead just to the launch, to launch the system. Because from a business point of view, I know very well what we are doing because I was familiar with the business logic. And they knew, okay, we did this. And I said, okay, we have to refactor this. This will become a maintenance nightmare. But what I don't realize, that the other guys was a lot of freelancer. And there was a different objectives.
Yeah.
Their objectives was just to bring some friends of them into the project and never get out. And I was saying, no, I'm not investing to work for the next 10 years in this project. I will do. My idea is to do a good job, and then we give it maybe to the maintenance department. So this was, as you said, I learned a lot of political behavior in projects.
I never actually got this strategy. There was a lot of companies try to spend as much time as possible in a single project, because such a strategy actually never pays off. So of course you could in short term sell a lot of hours for a company, but is it actually enough stuff to do around the world? So if you spread your clients, so you lower the risk, you learn more, and your clients even like you better because they have the feeling that you not try those to how to call it, to drain them, and yeah, but this is what I also observe is like if they are a project, I try to put as much people as possible to a project.
Yeah, but from a financial point of view, the funny thing is, 10 years later, I visited this company for a different consulting job because they had a lot of problems and they migrated a lot of stuff, and I know some of the guys from this time, but the freelancers, some of them was still there 10 years later with a very good daily rate. For them I think it was a cash cow.
Yeah, but the question is, they were properly lucky, but the question is, are they still at the company? Have they learned something, and whether they are still in business?
Yeah,
this is the interesting part.
Yeah.
So then next steps. So you spend the time with Perl,
and then I think yes, we did after that. I started a lot of this Java systems. Always insurance. This company was for insurance consulting. So always on different insurance companies, in different countries. There's was projects, but often also with UIs. So I also started at this time to build up UIs with JavaScript, and sometimes also to have the logic in JavaScript. And this time we often did this, yes.
Hey, cool. So this was probably the old JavaScript. It was for sure the old JavaScript with this and that and functions, right? And modules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
jQuery.
jQuery was very cool when it came out.
Yeah.
When we used it the first time, so it was very cool. But I never got the problem because for me, because as I mentioned before, I was already familiar in the early 2000 with Microsoft specific JavaScript code and HTML. So for me, JavaScript was always a good choice for building UIs. Why not? On the opposite, because I also tried to do some projects with JSF, with a JSF1, and this makes also no fun. JSF1. So for me, it was HTML and JavaScript a good choice also for UIs.
Yeah. And what I found early is in Java, I also had to parse XML. And at the beginning, you could use the built-in DOM API. And what I realized that the DOM API in Java is identical to the DOM API in the browser. And so for me, it was really easy to move from XML backend to frontend because it was exactly the same API.
Okay. Yeah.
You do remember this? Is this document org W3C DOM is still in Java out there, so you can still use it.
Of course, we also used it. But I think sometimes if we have to pass some HTML files, because of just to get some information from other websites where we have no backend access. So for this we used it, but on the front end stuff, normally we just use jQuery stuff to navigate through the DOM and with the CSS selector already at this time.
No, what I meant is we had to parse different XML files in the backend because of backend communication. So I was already familiar with the DOM concept because because the Java XML parser, how you set the attributes and there is a different node types, and you got exactly the same experience in the browser. Yeah. So this was for me. So I realized, wait a second. So we have two implementation of the DOM. One is C and the other one is Java.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I got it. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So this is actually amazing what you already did. So you Java, Perl, then JavaScript, and then back to Java again.
Yeah, and then I also keep at Java. Then I was different projects, different technologies, but I think 2006, 2007 around. Also from the technology stack, we moved a bit more to JBoss at this time. I think JBoss 5 was out there in 2006. Mm-hmm. JEE5, sorry, Java EE5.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And for me, it was a bit a game changer because before I also tested a little bit Spring, but I was not really happy with Spring with the XML stuff. I said, okay, so I don't know this, so it was not so nice. And so with Java EE5, I was very fascinated. I think that's cool. We should go ahead with this technology for new projects, and this is what we did.
Okay, this is actually amazing. So you are the first who found, Java EE5 amazing. So I also like that. And so you started right away with Java EE5. You never saw J2EE14, and you like the experience. That's interesting. And
yes, I know the EGP 2.1 and so on.
Okay.
But I have to implement it because of sometimes when we have a maintenance was not written from my company, but we have to add some functionalities to existing code. So we was forced to use it. And so we realized, okay, we have to write a little bit, some X-docklets and so on. I said, okay, this makes no fun. Writing X-docklets, you have compile times very long. we had a lot of problems with this stuff. So typically the IBM guys was before and installed the full stack for WebSphere, and with EGP 2.1 and then we have to use all the tools. Everything was very slow, so it was not a good experience at this time before.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, now it looks very cool with this annotation. That's good.
So what system you built? Your first system with Java EE5, what was it? So
this was an internal product we built as a company. Mm-hmm. It was a freelancer portal. was a skill wheel, just where you can add your skills and where freelancer and projects matched together. This was the first project as internal, where we have no external IT governance where we have to follow. So it was just our choice what we have did, and this was a small project we did as a company. After we also was a consulting company, and we sometimes used with freelancer to scale. This was the first experience.
Okay. And in one point we met. Was it around this time or later?
I think it was 2011 or something else. A little bit. It was later.
So it was way later. Okay.
Yeah. So it was 2006, I think, when we 2007 when we built the systems. Then we was in some projects, but some of my colleagues worked still in C projects, and then it's also I make a little bit more career in this company. In the end, I was head of technology, and I was also responsible to define the technology stack, because if we hire people, with which technology should we go? Because it's impossible to be expert in all technologies. So, and for the Java's ecosystem, we have to think, okay, should we go with Spring and become Spring experts, or make JEE? And for this, I also had the budget, which conferences should we attend or visit, which trainings do we book? And this was the time when I said, okay, it makes absolutely sense. Maybe if we ask Adam Bean if he can do an in-house training just to share this knowledge about all the colleagues.
Oh, I didn't know the background. So this was interesting. So I remember it was shortly before Christmas. So this is what I remember. We met somewhere, and there was a workshop where we also hacked together. So you ask questions and we hacked together something.
Exactly.
And so we never met actually afterwards. So for 8 years, and then I met you somewhere on Twitter. You tweeted something, and I say, okay, I know you from somewhere, and I say, okay, this is from back then, so it could be interesting conversations. So this is the background. And what was the decision afterwards? Was it Spring or Java EE?
No, it was Java EE. But in the end, of course, as a consulting company, we are also customer driven. But in our case, we had often the choice, because we did not just sell some developers. Typically, we do projects where we try to solve a business problem, and we had the choice. Of course, we had to be compliant with our customers, and for example, it was fixed to use an Oracle database and to use let the system run on a WebSphere, or maybe on a Tomcat or on a Wildfly. And then if you have the choice, we say, okay, we would like to go with this time JBoss. This was, so if we have the choice to control this process, we go with JEE.
Okay. Was it a good decision? So people like it, developers and you. So what was the feedback?
Yes, I would say they liked it, but my experience is also you have to sell a story also to developers. If you sell a good story, they like it. So it depends a little bit. So because of what I realized, not every developer is curious about new technologies. Some developers are just happy with, if they understand one of the ideas and concepts, they are fine. And from my point of view, like in all technologies, we had a lot of bugs in the beginning, also from the infrastructure. Some if you think about JSF, there was a lot of problems and bugs. You could have a lot of problems with memory leaks. But you have the same in other technologies. So with other frameworks. So, and in this case, I think I was able to sell it in a good manner. Said it's a good idea to go ahead with this stack. And also, yes, also I think it changed also a little bit on conferences when you visit. Was also a lot of JEE talks, because of the Oracle guys supported this stuff a lot. So I believe that people feel very comfortable with this decision.
Yeah, cool. That's interesting. I didn't know the outcome. So I forgot actually why I was there. I assumed there were some refactorings going on and helped you a bit, but this was like, a workshop about Java stuff. Okay, cool. So you stick with Java 6 then probably, and Java 7. And
yes.
were there any really interesting project afterwards, or just, typical?
Yes, maybe an interesting experience. Then after you visit the company, I think I changed, was 2013. I changed the company because I stayed for 15 years at this company. And then for me was just to have a new challenge. So I switched to Italian company. And the mission was to build up the business in the German-speaking area with another guy, with my general manager from this time at my former company. We changed to a new company, and this was more, let me say, a business job. So from a technical point of view, my mission was just to adapt the systems that it's working on because of this company was not a consulting company, they have a product. And my mission was just to adapt this product that is working in Germany from a regulatory point of view. Was also an insurance system, and this system was, from a technical point of view, not the best. Let me say, had its root in the early 2000s. It was developed by some C developers. They just use the Java API, but I believe they don't understand the concept of hash map, for an example.
Okay.
Because everything was structured like a struct in C. And so what was the interesting point? Everybody knows this in the company because there was no stupid guys, but you have the problem to change it because of if you design a product, and in our business for the insurance industry, it's very important to have the possibility for customizing the systems. And if you set up a system where the customizing is based on Java extension, you have big problems if you would like to refactor anything in your core. And this was a problem. And so one of my jobs was also to architecture, from an architecture point of view, to find some solution how we can migrate the system to a modern architecture. And in this company, I learned a lot more about politics.
Okay.
How this is working. And yes, and I worked for this company 5 years. We was also successful in Germany to sell the system, to implement. But from a technical point of view, it was there was proprietary frameworks even for persisting data, and so I learned a lot of stuff about how to maintain system, how to develop products right. But there was no funny things about JEE, let me say. This was something I developed afterwards in my spare time.
Okay.
Because I loved coding. Because at this time it was all, let me say, sometimes it was a little bit more PowerPoint than coding at working time.
And you enjoyed the PowerPoint time?
And because of after I was working in the night in my spare time was okay, because I think I collect a lot of experience, because if you design a system, what you have to consider, what is important also to write, if you would like to write an international system. So from a business point of view, it was very interesting. But in the end, I love coding. That's the point.
So, and then what happens afterwards?
Afterwards, was also interesting because it was a private equity managed company. So I had also some shares.
Okay.
And after this private equity company changed, this happens normally every 5 to 7 years. I think, okay, I'm out. I take the money and I found my own company. And also with the guy, my co-founder Pierre, he also was with me at Nobiscom and also at this former company. So we worked together for 15 years. And then we said, okay, we found a new company, Take 11, and this happened last year.
Oh.
And in the beginning of last year, we found this company, Take 11, where we built our own product with Java EE8, Jakarta EE8. And now I'm responsible for the IT governance. And of course, now we can do things which makes fun.
Okay, cool. So you have a startup. Is it a startup? So you decided to use Java 8, and no one forced you. So this was your choice. And you still like the decision?
Yes, I think it's a perfect decision.
Okay. And which server do you have for the backend?
This is something at the moment we are running on Wildfly. Because for authentication we use Keycloak. And for Wildfly you have a very good Keycloak integration. You have a submodule from Wildfly, from Keycloak. So at the moment you use a Wildfly. But sometimes we think about if we should change maybe to IBM Liberty. Because of Wildfly is very slow in implementing the MicroProfile APIs.
Yes.
At the moment, they're still on 1.3, and there's also no roadmap where you can find if they implement when they have in mind to implement new stuff. But at the moment, we are more or less happy with Wildfly. It's just working. We can focus on business logic, and this is our idea. We are not interested in doing infrastructure.
Yeah. This is also my opinion. And what you can do with Whitefly, there is a project called smallry.io, and you can pick the MicroProfile stuff and put to your WAR, and it will work on Whitefly. So you get your MicroProfile stuff. The problem is the WAR is a little bit bigger because this is the MicroProfile stuff. And very similar to Whitefly is Quarkus. You have to look at this. This is a Red Hat project, and it comes out of the box with MicroProfile. So this could be also interesting. But yeah, Whitefly is really slow. I don't get why. So it is like, for me, it is like, I mean, it is completely strange because Red Hat has all the MicroProfile implementation, and they, for unknown reasons, don't ship it with Whitefly, and they hurt actually their own customers with that. So I have no idea why.
Because of the ship, now in a quarterly manner, so every 3 months a new version of Whitefly is out. So I'm also, but I think the MicroProfile is part of the Thorntail, Thorntail stuff.
So by Thorntail is going to be end of life. So
Okay.
yeah, and the alternative is Quarkus is called. So
Yeah, I know Quarkus we already have in our backlog. I hope in the next our sprint ends in 2 weeks, and we would like to change 1 or 2 of our microservices to collect the first experience with Quarkus. Yes, of course, because I believe it has a real added value, because of even if at the moment we talk about 15 to 20 services we have, and if you go to a cloud provider, memory counts a little bit. As a startup. So and if you have with Quarkus a smaller footprint, I think then it's fine. And the first thing we try to do is with some just to change the packaging and to collect our first experience with 2 microservices.
And the Quarkus, it saves massively the memory. So it's the first time I see, okay, now we have a real difference. Back then, whether you use Thorntail or Swarm or Pyramicro, it was similar,
For me, I just downloaded the Hello World examples and did a first test. It feels like Node.js. So on a server side, so the startup time, it's there. So you have not no 5 seconds. It's up. So there was no difference to Node.js, where many people say exactly for this, if you're running in microservice architecture, or the startup time counts a little bit for the health checks and so on. But now I think there's no difference if you say Node.js or you develop with JEE and build with Quarkus. So it feels very similar.
Yeah, and it's even smaller than Node.js. If you compile it to native, it consumes less memory than Node, which also interesting.
Do you have it in production anywhere?
I will probably have it in production soon. Lots of my clients ask me to have proof of concepts, and we transferred some project from plain Java E8 to Quarkus, so it took a few hours, and it worked surprisingly. And so not in production yet. It's too early, of course, but it's considered everywhere. So so I will probably have something in production this year.
Because I followed, I think on Twitter something. I saw there was in the beginning some problems for the Keycloak integration and so on.
And regarding the Keycloak integration, what we usually do, we don't integrate Keycloak. We use MicroProfile JWT, and the Keycloak is just used, to implement the flow and to provide us the token. So we don't use the Keycloak adapters or quick Keycloak filters.
This is exactly the same approach we discussed, I think 2 weeks ago with our teams. If we change this also to the MicroProfile GWT, because at the moment we had this, as I mentioned, the Whitefly submodule, as a Keycloak submodule inside Whitefly for Keycloak. And I said, okay, if you would like to be more flexible to change also to OpenLiberty, I think, okay, you can package 6 or 7 megabyte Keycloak jar file to your WAR file, but that's not our idea. So we discussed about how we can change this, because just to get rid of these dependencies.
Yeah, and OpenLiberty, by the way, is also great. So it would be also a nice choice. So we talk a lot about the infrastructure. The question is, what you are building actually? What is your product? So what you are going to sell? And yeah.
Yes, as I said, I'm the tech guy. My co-founder Pierre is a sales guy. But of course, I'm also doing the pre-sale stuff. At the moment, we are building an insurance platform. for a core insurance system, which means the heart of an insurance company.
Wow, it means so. And who is supposed to use it, or what is the idea behind? So it's like if I would start my own insurance, I could use your stuff as a service, or
yeah, you can use it as a service. But at the moment in Germany, most of the company they would like to have a cloud-ready system, but they would host it on-prem at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But they say maybe in a few years we would move the system to the cloud. For example, we have at the moment one of our customer. We replace a system which is from the 70s. So
okay.
It's a COBOL system, and the developer would like to go to pension. So that's the reason they have a need. And there's a lot of small insurance companies out there which have exactly the same problems. They have legacy systems written in COBOL. They have to migrate because of there's no developer who can maintain the system. And we provide them a solution. Of course, there are other providers out there, not too much, fortunately, but typically they are very expensive. Mm-hmm. And we try to solve this because of we're a startup, we have the right technology, we are able to produce faster and in the end also cheaper. So this means we can offer more cheap licenses.
Okay, but this is actually incredible. And which clouds are you running right now?
At the moment, no, but one of our customers has he managed the hosting itself, but it runs on Azure, mm-hmm. And the other one use it on-prem. Because just to be clear, it's not a mass market. What we're doing, if you sell one time a year a license, we are more than happy. It's the license volume is very big. Do you know all the big insurance companies? They normally change this kind of system every 20 years.
Yeah.
So we have also an international approach, not only working in Germany, we have sales opportunity across Europe and a little bit in Africa.
Crazy. So there's
an
absolute success story. And how many developers do you have right now?
As also a funny story. At the moment, it's a big problem to find developers in Germany. I think it's one of the biggest challenge. At the moment, we are a team of 9 people. Mm-hmm. But fortunately, on the 1st of August, 3 people are starting. Mm-hmm. And one thing is very funny because of at the moment, as a small company with a big passion for technology, you cannot hire just everybody who say, okay, I love Spring, and then I have to convince them all the day. We would like to have good educated developers, like everybody. In the best case, with a similar mindset we had at the moment, our existing team have. Mm-hmm. And for this, I get a lot of applications across the world, but I believe sometimes it's very difficult to work only remote because if you would also to establish a company culture and so on as a startup. Mm-hmm. But there was a few candidates where I say, okay, I have to follow them. That's too cool. What they is because of they was very fixed. They give me feedback on an Instagram post from me on Instagram. I tried every channel and I get an answer, and so I get in touch with him with a guy in Ghana, in Accra. Mm-hmm. And after I had a chat with him, and then I realized he also have a video tutorial. And then I asked him, "Do you know Adam Bean?" And he said, "Yes, it's great. He follow your show." And because I said, could it be that you are the African Adam Bean because of he has a similar show like you in Africa? And it was very happy. And he just released a book about CDI and Jakarta EE.
In Ghana?
In Ghana.
Interesting.
And he said, okay, what you're doing is exactly from a technological point of view what I would like to work. And we said, okay, so that's a very good starting point. Now let's start. And the more funny thing is, exactly the same with a candidate from and this guy starts next week on the 1st of August.
In your company from Ghana?
Yeah, exactly, from Ghana.
Then greetings to him. So
and we already talked about you. And a more funny thing is a guy in Cameroon. He will start on the 1st of December. He also he did the. We had chat, and he was very interesting to have this chat because in Cameroon, software development industry is very new. And I asked him, why do you like Jakarta EE? And what do your colleagues on the university? And he says most of them use Python, mm-hmm. learn Python for machine learning. It's very popular and so on, but he don't like it too much. And he said, okay, he prefers the other, and said, well, good, right answer. And then we always do a test for challenge the guys. We give them a test just to see. And he had the complete Ajax stack. And after I saw it was a complete Ajax your Maven archetype he used. And okay, this for our backend this is exactly the approach, ThinWAR and so on. We also do. And so it was very funny. And then I said, okay, he said, yes, he follow your show. And this is where he knows the most about JEE and Jakarta EE because he's still at the university and he completed and then he started on the 1st of December at Tech 11. So it's very funny to find people with this technology stack. Normally the people knows you. And then it's very easy because as Tech 11 you can say our architecture in the backend is influenced from from your show and so on. And if somebody knows your show, you can, I would say we can very fast enable him.
Do you need additional developers? Because I can mention this on my show and point to your company. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, of course. We are looking forward. We are searching for developers, of course.
Yeah.
Would be great if you can do it.
So this is actually what was absolutely not aware. So what I didn't knew that you are watching my show, what I also didn't knew that you use, the boundary control stuff or whatever we talk in Ajax. And the whole Ajax thing is even funnier because how it started, similar to you, I think it was around your time, I got a lots of requests from different companies, help us establish architecture with Java EE and for me, the world is like, two parts. So like the funky part where you just like, play with things, and the people who would like to have to make things done. And they usually tend, to use something like Java in my world or MicroProfile right now. And so I'm on the, more boring part. And but the problem is I got so many requests, I couldn't manage them. I said, okay, what we can do, I will focus on more specialized requests. And then, the more general topics we can handle at the airport. But because I always flew from Munich and I saw, at Munich, like Municon conference center, it's like, why I'm not doing this here? Because the people could, come to me. And I started this, just because I'm alone, just not to say no to my clients too often. So, okay, then I can say I have no time, but if you like, come to me at Munich. And this is how it started. So there were the workshops at Munich airport. And by the way, the very first time, I assumed everyone will come from Germany, but the first one was already international. And the Ajax TV, what you mentioned, the show, was similar. So I got so many requests via email. It's like I cannot, answer technical questions every day. What I will have to do is to gather them and answer them at once because it's faster. And how to do it? And then I came the idea with the YouTube show. I don't know, this was 5 years ago or something. And this was the same. I assume, for my projects, people ask me something and I will answer. And what you are saying right now, this is a way bigger than I actually assumed. And what's also interesting, in all my shows, I mainly talk about the boring stuff. It's not like, the funky new reactive stuff. It's more like, what you can do. What is the simplest possible thing, what you can possibly do. And what interesting, this is interesting enough, to make students in Cameroon exciting. So this is, and they help you, which is incredible, actually.
Yeah, exactly. This is quite cool because at the moment, this is also from the technological point of view. Of course, as a founder of the company, I have also to take care about, let me say, a little bit IT governance. We have different services, and I cannot say everybody can do whatever you want because of then we have Spring, .NET, Go, and everything, and nobody's able to maintain this stuff. So at the moment, it's very easy. We can just say, use Java EE8 or Jakarta EE. Okay, if you need any additional dependency, just discuss it before.
Yeah.
Full stop. And it makes very easy for me, my management life, let me say. Instead of spending time in writing rules and guidelines the developer have to follow, I can just say, no, please go with the JEE stuff. We have some example, and if there's for some specific reasons, if it's necessary, for example, creating PDF documents or something else, makes sense to use external libraries, of course. But for the normal stuff, we are quite happy with this stack, and yes.
So, how big are your ThinWARs?
It depends a little bit, but typically a few hundred kilobytes.
Yeah, this is also my experience because sometimes I get the questions impossible when we never saw something like this. Sorry, but in my project is also like this. It's a few hundred kilobytes. Of course, if you have third-party libraries, is more. Also, interesting story now for you. There was a podcast with about the JCon conference. This is in Düsseldorf, and I was invited for a keynote. And usually a keynote, you have to prepare slides and think about strategy and say, okay, I have no time. I would just hack all the time. So what I did, I hacked, I think, something with Whitefly. I don't remember what. And someone asked me about clouds and what I knew. I have OpenShift running and behind because I did some hacking in the airplane. So okay, I can try, to show you this. So I pushed all the existing applications to OpenShift. I scaled that and scaled it down. And then after the keynote, there were attendees, so young students came to me with a piece of paper and asked me what was it. And I say, Java EE, what is it? Is it like Notes? Like, no, it's old stuff. If you search for Whitefly Java EE, it is like, and they wrote down where to find it. I say, okay, whitefly.org. And why was it so fast? This is normal. It's not fast. This is like it is. So, and for me, it is funny to observe right now. There is new wave of developers who never saw the old J2E 1.4 before, and they only see the new stuff. And they are absolutely open-minded, They actually ask me why the thing is so thin and so fast, and it's complete different experience than I would say 10 years ago, where everyone assumed that you have to use Xdoclet, to write a CRUD application.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I did similar experience because of in parallel a few days a year I have a job as a lecturer at the university where I teach Java EE to students.
In Würzburg?
In Würzburg, exactly. Mm-hmm. So it's a small course, about 15 people. And so it's some of the guys who attend this course, of course, they are fascinated from programming, but they come often from completely strange approaches. Let me say, I don't know, sometimes I have to say, okay, as the first step, we have to learn how to Google. Because of sometimes they come with examples. Okay, have a look to the date. It was 2005 what you just we find out, and of course this was very complicated. And then if you have a look to Node.js, looks of course more nice comparing to code snippets you find from the year 2005. That's one of the problems. I believe sometimes that the people didn't find the right sites in the internet for having the right approach.
Yeah. And the funny story is sometimes I know it's like, okay, Java EE for me is a little bit boring already. I would try, just for fun, something else. And whatever I found what was new, the amount of code you had to write was more than a small JAX-RS service. I was like, if I would post it on my blog or do something with it, I can even explain why I'm doing this, because there was some bootstrap code, some fiddling, and with JAX-RS, there's 2 annotations on a method and you're ready to go. So it's like it cannot be any leaner, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you said you had 8 developers, one from Ghana, so Air Hacker, and the other one from Cameroon, also Air Hacker.
Cameroon, he will start first. It's Artem. He will first start in December. He just has to complete his university study.
Hey, very good. And the other developers?
The other developers are in Würzburg. So some of them are former colleagues of me, of course, the personal network, who have the same mindset. And some of them are new, and yes.
And the mindset, our mindset is very similar. So my mindset is, it's actually what you mentioned and what I usually say is actually agile. What it basically means, just implement whatever you can today and care about the problems tomorrow if you or defer any unnecessary decisions to tomorrow, or care about potential problems tomorrow, right? And so right now, if you download Quarkus, Open Liberty or Whitefly or whatever, you can start with nothing. So for me, what is interesting is the time to first commit has to be low. If it is low, the project gets automatically accepted everywhere because the developer can immediately start. There is no preparation. And start right now and don't care about the dependencies. But what I see is there are other developers who don't like this approach because it is actually boring. You have to focus on the business logic, and you cannot fiddle with nice frameworks and libraries and programming languages because there is no room for it, right? So your developers are like the getting things done developers. All of them, they enjoy it.
Yes, I would say yes. But I think it's a little bit different because what you describe typically is projects, but we are building a product.
Yeah, right.
And we have a custom solution on top. And for products in our business, we have to think about that we have to maintain this stuff for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And this is what I like the microservice approach, that we have just the API as an interface, that we can say, okay, we are able to refactor behind the scenes everything we would like. And if we think in 5 or 10 years, we go with .NET because of Microsoft make everything right at the moment, we are able to do this. So this is something where also from a sales point of view, we can say we have latest technology, but as every company tells that they have the latest technology at a certain time.
Yeah.
And what happens 5 years later?
So how I sell it is we not only have the right technology, but we are only we have just minimal dependency on the technology, because if you see what you are doing with Java EE, we have a view business classes and a view annotation. So there is no a huge dependency on the Java EE stuff, right?
Yeah, but in our case, if we sell something, we don't sell technology.
No, of course.
We sell business values, and the guys on the other side of the table are business people. They understand, for example, in our business, some of the big vendors, they make projects about they sell a license, a product, and to customize is around 50 million euro, the customizing of an existing product. And the migration of the old system is another 50 million euro. So this means these figures have the people in mind, and big companies like SAP, for an example, which are not so focused on this insurance market, but they have some clients in this business also. They pay just for a technical update. The customer have to pay around 8 million. Because of you have to test everything and so on, and there's no added business value. And this is the figures that people have in mind, and we have to convince them what is our strategy to keep this update maintainability costs small.
Yeah.
This is something that we have to, but if we have not to talk about WAR files and dependencies, this is how we solve this problem, but the people are normally not interested in details. Sometimes we get some technical reviews, but typically from enterprise architects who also don't understand this problem. PowerPoint architects who are not able to understand dependency management in detail. So for this, you have to draw some nice pictures. They understand the concept and the decoupling of the system of our microservices and so on.
But what I meant is, if you just focus on the business and you only marginally dependent on the infrastructure, then if something happens, you can move faster the technologies and you can lower the risk. This is exactly. So what I also assuming you also don't get polyglot programming, right? You're not propagating that every developer implements the microservice in different language with different stack, right?
Exactly. What we're doing in the back end is Java EE, and in the front end we use ES6 and web components.
Oh, also this. Also, I assume you use Angular or whatever. So you just use WebStandards and ES6. I
started with the first prototypes when I had the vision of this company some years ago with Angular, and I liked it very much. And I was fascinated about the two-way value binding, and it was great. But then after Angular 2, I said, okay, we cannot go ahead. If it's changed from Angular 1 to Angular 2 in this manner, that's a disaster. And then, I had a little bit luck with the timing because of, I think the last 24 months, what happens on the browser, it's incredible.
Yes.
So, for Chrome and Firefox, I think 1.5 years ago, also Firefox had many lags if you just use the ES6 stuff. But now I think we're writing our front ends with web components and ES6, and it works quite good. And if we have some technical guys on the table in workshops, for example, guys like from Codecentric, Uwe Friedrichsen, these are the guys who challenges us. He asked them, okay, could you just for him personal interest, are we slower comparing to React? If you use React. I say, I don't believe that we are slower, because the most time we spend is just to think about, in the front, about user experience, how to implement business logic, but the coding itself is normally not the issue.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, the web components, if you do them right, they look exactly like React.
Yes, let me say, the web component is even more complicated to find developer who say, okay, we make ES6 and web components, because of young developer normally say, okay, we would like to do React only.
Okay, that's interesting.
But then I have to convince them that if you are able to develop React, have a look to the standards. Inside it looks quite similar.
But you're also using lit HTML, right?
Yeah, but in the beginning we started a little bit without, but then if we talk about cross-site scripting and so on, then we say, okay, we use lit HTML.
Yeah, and the lit HTML, that's huge benefit is first the syntax, then you get to know the listener bindings and the performance improvements, because it's just, it is like differential rendering, so it only renders what changed, right?
Yes, but before we now we use lit HTML. Before we used hyper HTML exactly. But there was some. I also on GitHub I had some issues and I mentioned some bugs because for this we had some problems how we used it. But at the moment it's fine. We also make some sorts if you would like to, if we should use a lit element. But at the moment, I said no. We have no real need for using lit element.
Exactly. I never used lit HTML lit element. I always just use the library, the render and HTML functions.
But the problem is from a documentation. If you have a look to websites like Open, WC, everything is done with lit element. And if you find some developer who just follow some tutorials, it's most time it's also using lit element, which is. Then you have to explain a little bit more if you just use lit HTML and say, okay, the rest, there's no added value. But with lit element, you have some points for the value binding out of the box.
I had an interesting experience. So usually I only have to do something with Java developers, but in this project as well, so I helped the company to build the backend, microservice backend with Java EE and MicroProfile. And then they asked me what to do in the front end. Like I would say WebStandards, just go without frameworks. They had also lots of trouble with Angular. And then I had to work with developers had no experience with Angular, actually. They were jQuery developers, just jQuery and web. So like, the hardcore web developers. Yeah. And then I showed them, web components, and they were a little bit skeptical. And then lit HTML, even more skeptical. And then I never heard about them for 6 weeks. And I spent a lot of time with the company with the backends, but they never appeared. And recently, I had a chat, and they told me, this is great. This was the best possible choice, we need more. Can we have a meeting? It's like, yeah, of course. And then I was like, and you really like it? It's like, yes, this was really nice. There is no NPM, no builds, nothing. And the cool story is they don't even need, Internet Explorer 11 to support because it's almost not existing anymore. And now we just, we have no NPM. So you can just develop with browser sync and you are set.
Okay. And but do you package the applications, or do they package the application in the end to have one file, or do you just ship it as the ES6 module?
I ship it as they are, because if you really would like to optimize, you should use HTTP2. Then it's faster. And pushing everything in one file can be a little bit slower because of mobile devices. They have to parse everything at once. And you could of course split them if you have router, but I don't think it is worth the effort now.
I think the thing we are thinking about, because at the moment we use Parcel to package everything, but I'm also not really happy about this. I think about if we go ahead without any transpiling and just use it, then we have maybe a caching problem. So we have to solve this, because at the moment you have always an app.js with a timestamp or something else behind. So we have to think about that all JavaScript files are not cached. So something we have
but you can do this on the Jenkins pipeline. You can do it once, whatever you like, and you don't have to do it all the time. That's the cool story in my world. Yeah. So we don't have any NPM on our machines, and if you like, you can run your NPM on the Jenkins. And we don't use Parcel. I use Rollup.js. And this is like the inverse Parcel. Parcel comes with everything inside, and Rollup is nothing, because you almost don't need anything. You just need if you like to bundle the files, we use Rollup.js. So this is actually amazing. So you do similar stuff in the front end as well. And if you need developers, I have actually a video course about web components and PWAs, so you can send him this. Don't use the lit HTML in the course.
Okay, that's very good. So because this is something where you have to explain people how to go ahead, because if they follow a tutorial, typically a lit element is part of it. But at the moment, I say just go to MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. This is what we are doing, and for rendering, we just use lit HTML.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, the last thing which interests me: what are the names of your microservices you have? So just roughly. So the wars. What are?
Okay, because of this is something from an architecture point of view, it's not a clean microservice architecture. Let me say it's more a SOA architecture based on microservice technology.
Okay.
Otherwise, because of the dependencies.
Okay.
We have a BPM BPM engine, the Camunda BPM.
Okay.
Which orchestrates the services, because of this is our entry point for customization.
Mm-hmm.
Because of an insurance company typically differs in insurance products where we can configure, and the processes. And the processes are managed via BPM, and this is what also insurance company knows how this is working.
Mm-hmm.
And then we call the different services, because if we have in our microservices direct calls to other services, then it's very difficult to exchange single services. Because of if you go to a big insurance company, which is not a greenfield company, normally you have to use some existing modules, document generating or something else. Mm-hmm. And therefore we have this. And so we have a microservice for tariff, premium calculation, policy, claims. So they are not so small, let me say. It's the service cut is done by thinking about, from a business point of view, which could be replaced. Mm-hmm. For example, many companies have already a system to generate PDF policy documents, and it was very expensive, and it's working. And if it's working, we say, okay, then please go ahead with it. It makes no sense to replace. But then we have to integrate this stuff. And so they have a separate business partner module. So this is how we cut our service. So it's not extremely small, but I think it has the right size for replacing and for managing it.
Okay. That's actually really nice and pragmatic. So it's amazing. So cool startup in Würzburg with an international team. And the question now, where people can find you. So and how to apply, if someone would like to have a job with ThinWARs and lots of fun. So how to apply in your company, where people can find you, and what's the references?
Yeah, you can just send me a ping on Twitter. It's Matthias Reining, or on LinkedIn, the same Matthias Reining.
Okay. And what is the URL of your company?
It's tech11, tech11.com.
Okay. And if another company, someone listens to the show and would like to buy your services, then you can just go through Tech11 and they will find, someone
exactly.
who will. Okay.
Exactly. We have no basket. It's no business where somebody say, okay, I have a basket. I say add and buy it. Typically there's some presentation and sales cycles, but of course we find it on our website, and then we start typically discussing about his need.
Okay, perfect. And the episode I mentioned was the episode number 36, Java Native Database, with Markus Kett, and and Markus Kett organizes the JCon conference. This is where the interesting part with the keynote and Whitefly and OpenShift happened. So cool. So what we should do, Matthias, in a few weeks or month, we should repeat that and see whether you are still happy with Java EE and MicroProfile or even Quarkus. And another thing for the backlog, Quarkus come also with a small embedded decision or business engine, so you will also have to check it out. It's also nice. So thank you. Any final words? So everything?
No, everything fine. Thank you very much. Was a great talk. Thanks.
So thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.